What's up, TCG Buzz? It's your boy, Dat Boy Zwei, and I'm here with my 5th place Zwei deck profile. And other than that, let's get into it. Alright, time to raise the flag. Of course, we're running the best boys ever, running Dragon Zwei and Future Eater as my buddy. And the reason I decided to go Future Eater for my buddy is because then you gain more life than you lose it, instead of Destructor where you see it once and then you're like, oh, well, whatever. But then at the same time, you're gaining 5 life instead of just 4 on top of gauge and all that nonsense. And starting with 20 life, a lot of people can't handle that for some reason. It helps out a lot of your matchups, especially Chaos, because they kill you dead. They kill you very dead. And then we're running the best version. We're running 3 Dragon Drais. And, I mean, it's a security blanket against duo golems at the absolute worst. Because it's like, well, you could put into play with Daeva Sis, but at the same time, if you know they can output more damage at the end of the turn, then you could just keep it in your hand. Because that's also like gaining 10 life instead of 5. In which most cases you need to do that. And then we have 4 Future Eaters, respectively, that this card is arguably probably the best 0-drop in your deck. It is arguably the best 0-drop, because then it gains life, and pops your Azi, which is something you really need to do in this deck, turn 1 or turn 2, especially against the Chaos. Like Chaos, you get 1 turn of leniency, and that's it. Turn 3, they've already drawn half their deck and have already gone through the whole shebang. And on top of that, he grabs back your size 3 or greater monsters, which is like, I don't know, half your deck. Then we have 4 Blittians, and then we also have 3 Style of Impact Ball Dragon. Essentially the same card, except one, you don't get to see what you put in and it takes a life. The other one is infinitely better because you check the top 3 for monsters. You may put any of them to your gauge and then the rest of the drop, which helps sets up for your Future Eater plays. And then we got 2 Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Reset Black Scale. You don't need any more than this because realistically you only have 4 targets in the deck, which is fine. And if you need to search out like dead Dragon Drais out of your hand just to help feel for what's-his-face, it's fine. I mean, it takes 2 damage, but who cares? At the very worst, it feels the cause. Speaking of feeling the cause, here is 4 Spawn of the Demonic Dragon Abyssgate. It searches out your Daevas, your Azis, and all that fun jazz while also ramping you, and then he fulfills the cost for Sis anyways. Then we have 4 Destructors. I decided to bump him up towards the last minute ever since we decided to upgrade the deck. And quite honestly, the 4th one helps quite a bit. You take 2 damage, but who cares? If you are already in dry, you just use them to either gauge and draw or fill up the costs for your other monsters. And then we have 4 Pro Vargas. Arguably the best low-cost monster in your deck outside of Future Eater. This is definitely like the 2nd best low-cost boy because you can counter with him in your hand or on board if you're trying to get a push in just for that extra good old 1-inch punch. And then he blows up Azi Dahaka and then you draw 2 cards off it, which is really good with, you know, some of the cards in this deck. And plus drawing 2 cards is just generally a good idea. Then we have 4 Retainer of the Demonic Dragon Abyssgate Dragon Shield. It's one of the few nullifies in the game where you get to draw a card, and the reason why this deck has all these different worlds is because of him. Quite honestly. Like, the problem with building Zwei is that you're so Darkness Dragon World heavy, you have to make room for the other worlds. So, and plus he draws you a card, regardless if Azi's in your yard or not, which is nice. And then this is probably coming out on a later date, but he was really great for what he was during the tournament. I rarely used him, but when I used him, it was mainly to pop my own Azi as cost, because then my Azi triggers, draws me a card, does the whole shebang, and then on top of that, he has Shadow Dive to get past all those sneaky little chaos creatures. And then we have, speaking of, 3 Mark of Atonement, Azi Dahaka Sis. So then he draws you a card when he dies, and then he puts Dry into play from your hand and or deck, and then you gain 5 life when he dies. Also, he has triple attack penetrate, which is dope. Arguably one of the best support Bushiroad has ever done for this deck. And channeling the inner spirit of my friend Jacob Jones here, we got the Death Osmodai, best Osmodai. Can't prove me wrong. But basically, when he dies, you take your 2 life, whatever. That's not relevant. The thing is, you check your top 3 for monsters and call them for free. And then you put the rest of your drop. So, like, then you could just play, like, Future Eater Azi on their turn. They're like, oh, well, okay, I'm dead. Then we have 4 Sky Carnage Tyrants, Zurvans, that he gets to attack all monsters your opponent controls and their face at the same time. So even if they have a monster there, he doesn't give a flying crap. He doesn't give a 5th Omni about him. And then when he dies, you discard a card and then put a Azi Dahaka size 3 monster from your hand and or deck and put it in play for free. Also, it's not once per turn. Also, it also includes himself. So you can Zurvan into Zurvan, which is what this deck needs, because otherwise this deck would be bad without it. And then we have Azi Gaen, arguably my best card against 90% of the matchups out there, because this guy single-handedly like hosed Chaos and the one Leviathan deck, that he gets to attack all monsters they control instead. And then the important part is at the end of the battle, which this card is taxed, so that regards nullifies and all that, then you get to destroy a card on their field, doesn't matter which one, and deal 3 damage to your opponent. So regardless if he gets nullified or not, he's going in. You're taking that damage. You are just taking it. Also, Solar double attack, which is really good. And then we have 2 White Supreme Dragon Deity of Creations, and then we have 3 Demonic Dragon Deity of the Black Sun Gaen. My only change I would really do to this lineup is bump up Black Gaen to 4 and bump him down to 1 in the main and sideboard the other one. Because quite honestly, as it stood, I really wished I had more of him in my deck to see him more often to get the turn 1 play. Because your goal is turn 1 Black Gaen. That is your goal. That is what this deck does. That is the entire purpose of this deck's existence, to lock your opponent out of drawing cards for a turn and then kill him the next turn if you can. But if you don't know what either of them does, White Deity, when he enters, after you transform, you draw until you have 6 in your hand, which you spent most of your hand doing anyway, so you effectively draw 4 cards on average. And then he can discard a card, not once per turn, to give him Penetrate or Double Attack. Also, he happens to have 15,000, 4, and 12. You know, the typical release transformations like can't be returned, destroyed, whatever, fine, great. Keck, gawk buns. And then the black one, every time he attacks, your opponent's monsters are all destroyed at once, which is really relevant against Chaos, because their Gear Gods are just instantly dead the moment you attack them, unless they use a Nullify. Because then they're like, okay, I use Chaos Drain to protect Gear God. Neat, I'm still attacking it. Oh, well, it's dead then. Okay, I accept this. And then the turn that you transform into Gaen, during their next turn, they cannot draw cards at all. They can charge, but they can't draw. So they can't do stuff like Dimensional, Desuction, whatever the new stuff is. None of that. They can't do anything. They're just, what they have is what they get. And they have to work with it. And then if your monsters aren't doing enough, you can just use them to fuel him. That you pay 2 gauge and then you discard 2 size 3 or greaters from your hand to gain 5 life. Which, is arguably one of the misplays I did against 5th Omnis. I just gained 5 life. So that way I had more than enough to survive the next turn. And then I still get to pop all of his monsters, regardless if he nullified it or not. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with the way the main deck operated. Not for the side deck, you know, the thing that I barely touched all day. But arguably the card I side into most is Dd Energiya, because then, despite its steep cost of 5 gauge, it comes in with 2 souls, so that's 3 lives already. And then during either attack steps, it nullifies all the abilities of all cards on your opponent's side. It doesn't matter if it's field spelled or not, it doesn't work. It just does not work. And then the card itself cannot be nullified, so that's good. He cannot attack to the left or right, but you don't care because all you care about is busting through the center. And he has double attack and move. And your opponent cannot use counters against this card's attacks, which is busted. And then we have 4 reverse Black Eddies. I'm not really going to go over him too much because he's quite honestly coming out of the deck. He's really, really good. Really awesome. But unfortunately, the power level of the deck is just so high that he doesn't really help our cause. Great monster, though. I love him to death. It's just, I have come to terms with this. 2 Wicked Dragons of Fabrication. It's basically your spell null against like chaos and whatnot to stop them from drawing cards. And then on top of that, I would use this probably against 5th Omnis to stop their nullifies. I actually sided this against 5th Omnis and Chaos, at least twice. So the other Chaos decks, it ultimately depends. If you're going second, you want it to side it in. If you're going first, you don't need it. Philosophias, if you really need to kill him dead, you kill him dead. And it's also really good against like the rest cards, which I should have sided this more often now that I know that they play those cards in like Chaos and 5th Omni. I wish I sided this against the 5th Omni player. That was one of my mistakes. But he withstands one of your size 3 or greaters, and it's really good. And then, last but not least, Best Tenbu. Best Tenbu. That every time he enters or you take a damage, destroy all monsters they control. Simple as that. And then he has double attack Soul Guard. So you have this guy, and then they're like, well, okay, I guess I gotta go after Tenbu first. And then that's okay, because then they have to attack Tenbu, in which most cases you can protect it with your shield, or he dies, but that's okay. Then they can't attack you. And that's his whole purpose in life. But other than that, that was the version 1.0 that I've been very, very happy with. Me and the gang have worked quite a lot on this deck, especially on my end. Get my, like, Black Gaen is my own personal touch. That is me. I am Black Gaen. But other than that, that was the 5th place deck profile. Congrats unto the other top 8 players, and I will hope to see you guys at Springfest.